This is the courthouse of Lyon. Huge building, neoclassical style, right? This style you can find it everywhere in the world. It was built in 19th century, right? So if you have a building from 19th century, it will be this style, right? This is the British Museum in England. British Museum, same style, right? This is the Capitol in the US, same style, right? And if you go to Russia, Eastern Europe, whatever, you'll find those pylons, and this style is super common from 19th century. So this is super different from Old Town, right? Totally another time. This courthouse is huge first, but also is super important for the history of France, because in there we had a super important trial for the real history of France in World War II. Is the trial of Klaus Barbie. I don't know if you know him or if his names ring a bell. Klaus Barbie. Klaus Barbie was the chief of the German police in Lyon, the chief of the Gestapo, right? He was sent to break the resistance. As I told you, it was the capital of the resistance, so he was sent here to break the resistance. The nickname of Klaus Barbie was exactly the Butcher of Lyon. So that, maybe this ring a bell, right? This is more famous than his name. The Butcher of Lyon, so you can imagine what he was doing, right? People say that he killed more than 14,000 persons in Lyon. And he's famous because he was torturing person by himself, right? He was a psychopath. Huh? After the war, the US government helped him to run away to Bolivia, because back then the new enemy was communism. So they helped a lot of German officers to run away because they wanted them to fight the communist revolution in South America. So he was sent to Bolivia to train the police of the dictator to fight the communists in Bolivia. Actually, he trained the unit that caught Che Guevara in Bolivia. Che Guevara was caught in Bolivia, right? By people trained by Klaus Barbie. He stayed there more than 40 years. 40 years under a fake identity. But after like a bit more than 20, almost 30 years, some people found his trace. The Klarsfeld couple. These are Nazi center. It's a couple. She is German and he's French. His father died in a concentration camp, right? They were looking around the world for Nazis, and they found the trace of Klaus Barbie in Bolivia. But they couldn't prove it was him, right? He was in the fake identity protected by the Bolivian government, right? So they asked for an interview. They asked for an interview of a businessman, a German businessman, you know, and he accepted. But under the surveillance of the Bolivian police, so they couldn't ask what they want to ask, right? But what they did, is they asked, do you speak French? Did you ever go to France? He said, no, I don't speak French. But at some point of the interview, they asked him a question in French, and he answered straight away. Clap. And you have the video on YouTube, right? So on YouTube you see his face when he realized he made a mistake. But the Bolivian police also knew something bad was happening. So they tried to take back the films. But the cameraman, he gave them an empty film, and he took the real film under his jacket, and they ran away with it. They also gave him a picture of Jean Moulin to recognize the chief of the resistance. He said, no, I never saw this guy, but with the fingerprint on the picture, they could bring them back home and prove that it was Klaus Barbie. But still, we had to wait 10 years, almost 10 years, for him to be bring back to Europe, because we had to wait for the Bolivian government to fall down, because they were protecting him. At the very end, because, not him, Klaus Barbie knew that if the Bolivian government fell down, he's screwed, he will be sent to Europe. So to support the Bolivian government, he made some deal with Pablo Escobar to protect him against money, to give the money to the Bolivian government to support them, to support their police and stuff. But in 1983, he was sent to France, the Bolivian government fell down, and we had him in France. But 1983, it's 40 years after the war. And in 1987, he was judged in this courthouse. So you can imagine, it's almost in the 90s, right? It's super recent, and it was in the courthouse. You can find the trial on YouTube also. The 2 hours of trial, it's on YouTube. It was the first film trial in France. They changed the law especially because they wanted people to remember, right? They wanted to give trace to the future generation. I don't recommend to watch it though, because it's disgusting. You have to imagine back then, there was a queue from here to there of all people, mostly old women, coming back to testify of what happened to them when they were 20, 30 and stuff like that. And he was all the people coming back, he never says sorry. Huh? For him it was just the war, part of his job, and you know, it was his duty kind of. He was sentenced to jail, and he was already old. Huh? He spent maybe 7 years in jail and died. Because we abolished death penalty in France a few years before he was judged. Actually, the guy who abolished death penalty, Robert Badinter, had his father sent to concentration camp by Klaus Barbie himself. So it's a terrible irony, and like it's an incredible part of the history of France. The trial was crazy. Okay, this is what happened in the courthouse, and if you visit it, it's open sometimes. You see a lot about this trial because it's the main